Okay, so I am so excited to have Diane tonight on our wellness workshop. So these wellness workshops, they are, I host them once a month and I have a different guest speaker each month just to talk about a different topic, like nothing really to do necessarily with health and fitness, but I do believe that everything that we deal with as women really does somehow tie into health and fitness and wellness as a whole. And conscious parenting is like 100% a topic that I am just like I just want to keep learning more and more about it. And truthfully, a couple years ago, if somebody had said conscious parenting, I wouldn't have had the slightest clue what that even meant. And even still today, it's like if someone were to stop me and ask me quick what that means, like I might have a like stumble over my words and have a hard time fully explaining it. But I think that this is just something that we all need to dive into a little bit and just open our eyes to, and just sort of like be willing to shift our perspective on things and shift maybe how we have been thinking of parenting a little bit. I know it's helped me a lot. It wasn't something that happened naturally for me, and I think I still have a long ways to go with my parenting, but it's definitely like I can see like major improvements in my parenting over the last couple of years, but it wasn't anything that happened overnight by any means. So I'm going to hand it. Okay, that's fine, Andy. I'm going to hand it over to Diane. So Diane and I met a couple years ago on a retreat, actually. And, you know, neither one of us knew each other. None of the women at this retreat knew each other. But by the end of the weekend, we were all very much connected because all of the layers are sort of shed, and, you know, everybody's guard is down, and you get to know people on a whole other level when you're in a retreat setting. But I really looked up to this woman, and I still look up to her. And she just is somebody that like I kind of aspire to be. And she's just such a role model for parenting and her whole messaging. So Diane actually helps women, I wrote it down, or she helps parents understand their child's behavior. And I'm just going to say that again. She helps parents to understand their child's behavior. So I'm just going to let that sink in a little bit, but I'm really, really excited for us to dive into this. And I think we're just going to kind of keep things like, you know, surface level, because I'm assuming, and use the chat box if you want, but I'm assuming maybe we're all sort of like newish into what conscious parenting is. And if you even want to share in the chat box, like I'm assuming most of you are mothers on here, and just share a little bit about like your parenting, how many children you have, maybe even how you feel you are showing up as a parent. And then at the end, I would love if there was time for a Q&A. And if you had something that you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to run this situation by her, or this question, tonight is definitely the night for that. So Diane, I'm just gonna let you take it away, and you can share a little bit about how you kind of got into this. And then I think just diving into what conscious parenting actually is, and sort of what we had talked about before, just like how can we as newbies into conscious parenting start to implement it, and maybe make some changes, and even comparing like this isn't conscious parenting, but this is conscious parenting.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for all of your kind words. And thank you for asking me to come on and speak about this, because it is my favorite subject to talk about. And the more people we can reach, the better. And I hope I can keep it at a surface level, or keep it, there's so much to talk about with conscious parenting that sometimes my head just is like, oh. And so I hope it kind of comes out all making sense. Okay, so let's dive in. What is conscious parenting? Probably the easiest definition I can give is it's really about being the person you want your child to become. And another way of saying that, a couple other ways, is it's being the change that you want to see. Or using the exact behaviors, and only the exact behaviors you want your child to use. And that is very difficult for us to do. And maybe we're not even conscious that we're not just using all of the behaviors we want our children to use, but actually, unconsciously, we are using a lot of things typically that we don't want our kids to use. We might be yelling. We might be, using, just things that we don't want our children to use. That probably doesn't make sense, but I'm gonna step back a little bit and tell you how I came about conscious discipline. So I raised 3 children, and I had a really difficult time in my parenting. I really struggled. They had some really big behaviors, and I was also a teacher. And we were starting to see, after, I've been in education for, 30 years. And probably after the first 15, we just started seeing behaviors rise. And probably in the last 10 years especially, it's just exploded. And so in my parenting struggle, I finally thought one day, there's got to be something else to this. There's got to be something else I can do, because what I did everything that I knew to do. And what I knew to do was to control my children's behavior or try to stop all the misbehavior. And the belief was that a compliant child equals a good parent. And so on the flip side of that, it must have meant a non-compliant child meant a bad parent. And I don't think we all really say that, but it's implied. And it's implied in the teaching world too. If you have a classroom that's disruptive, you're a bad teacher because you can't control those children. So I started opening myself up to, there's got to be something else here. And so when I did that, when I opened myself up to maybe there's another way, that's when conscious discipline came into my life. So I learned these skills through a program called Conscious Discipline, written by Dr. Becky Bailey. And she does have a website, so you can check all that out. But since then too, I've learned some of these skills from other researchers and theory teachers. So I adopted these skills, and it completely changed my life. It changed all of my relationships. It changed the way I ran my classroom, and people noticed. The administration noticed, and what they really noticed when they came to visit was it felt different. It just didn't look different or sound different. It felt different. The whole culture of the classroom had changed. And so what happened, fast forward, I ended up now, I've left the classroom, and now I am teaching these strategies to all of our teachers in our program. And now I'm teaching parents as well in our program and outside of our program. So where do you want me to go from here?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to kind of hear your background, but even just going more into what conscious parenting kind of looks like for me, I knew I needed to get some help with my parenting, because I felt totally out of control. Like I had these 4 children who I always wanted, yet I felt like I was yelling all the time. and I felt like they were out of control, and I felt like they never listened to me, and they don't respect me, and they are constantly screaming at each other and disrespecting me. Like that was sort of always how I felt, and I felt really irritable and angry, and I went to bed at night then feeling sick to my stomach because I felt like all I had done at night, or all I had done all day, was yell at them. And
Right.
it just like left a pit in my stomach, and I would think, okay, tomorrow's going to be better. Tomorrow I'll be more calm and patient, and like I won't yell as much. And then right away it was like, well, you guys made me do this. You guys have made me lose control. You have made me angry. You're not listening to me. You guys need to settle down. Don't be disrespectful. Like that is how I was parenting. And
Yes.
yeah, and then so it took for me to realize, I had to have somebody really help me with this, but sort of like put myself in the mirror and realize it was me not listening to them. It was me always yelling. It was me being very disrespectful. And so when I started to do the work, because we can't expect our children to do the work, like most parents aren't even willing to do the work or even know they have to do the work. So how would we ever expect little human beings to like
Yeah.
work on themselves? And oh, you're right, I should probably work on my listening. Like
Right.
I was never listening to my child. Like I would be saying, you're not listening to me, meanwhile I'm talking over them and not listening to them. So it was like a hierarchy. Like I was up here and these little people are down here, and they better listen, they better do what I say, they better obey and not be disrespectful. So
Yeah, that's totally my story too. And it's totally, I think so many of us are stories. And I think there's such a fear that our children aren't going to be compliant, and then we're going to be seen or judged as that bad parent. And so the more insecure we are in that, the harder we will be on our kids. And the reason for that is because most of us were raised on traditional discipline that's actually founded, the foundation of that is fear. So the number one barrier in our relationships and in our ability to learn, to grow, and to create change in our life is fear. And yet, we use fear as the basis for getting our kids to either stop a behavior or do something else. And so we feel like we're hitting our head against a wall because actually we are building a wall. And so we become part of the problem. So what we want to do is we're going to make this big shift from fear-based practices to conscious practices. We're actually going to become conscious of what those traditional messages are telling our children and what they told us. So what we're shifting to, really, consciousness is really based in love. And it's a focus on the relationship rather than a focus on control. So the reason that we get so triggered and we're, yelling and all that is because we were yelled at when we were children. We were reprimanded. And all of those fear-based disciplines stress our system, and over time they cause a belief of I'm not good enough. And so when our children act out, there it is again. It's poking that, oh, you're not good enough. When our children are using behaviors that we got reprimanded for, it pokes that same emotion, although we might not remember it, but our body does. It's stored in our body. And so our body reacts in a fight or flight reaction. And so we're blaming our kids, and we're telling our kids they have to change, but they're only 3 and 4 and 8, and they don't have the tools. We tend to think, the belief is that children do these behaviors on purpose, and that they're disrespecting us, or it's somehow a threat to our authority. And when we have those thoughts, that drives our feelings, which drive our behavior, and we're going to react in whatever way we can to stop it. And so when we're conscious of that, what we do actually is become aware of our triggers, and we start to manage that. Because what discipline, when discipline first became a word, it meant to teach. But over time, it has come to mean basically punishment, or whatever you're going to do to get your child to comply. But discipline, and Dr. Bailey talks about this, she says discipline is something we build within our children, not something we do to them, because that's what we really want. We want them to have self-discipline so they can manage themselves, right? Because if we're controlling them, at what magic age are they now able to control themselves? Well, what happens is, as it did with me, I was an adult who had no control. I didn't manage my behaviors. So I had to learn that. And so conscious parenting is a adult first, child second practice. So like you were saying, Megan, you look at yourself first, and you teach yourself the skills, you learn the skills, and you implement them into your life. And then you become the model for your child. And when your child experiences the change, their behaviors will naturally fall into place. So like you were saying, so say I want my child to listen more. That's a big one. My child never listens. So then what we want to do is shine the light away from our child onto us and say, I'm going to listen more. I'm going to listen to myself, because how often do we listen to our inner knowing, our inner tuition? Do we listen to the voice in our head? Do we even know it's there? Because we are not our thoughts. Our thoughts are our thoughts, and they come and go. We are not our thoughts. And so what is that voice in your head saying? Is it critical, or is it compassionate? And for most of us, it's critical, because it's our parents' voice in our head saying, you didn't do this the right way, da, 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 da. And the way you were disciplined is the way you will discipline yourself in your head. And the way you discipline yourself in your head is the way you will discipline your children, especially when you're stressed. And the way you discipline your children is the way they will discipline themselves in their head for the rest of their life, unless we choose to learn a different way and change that generational pattern.
Yeah, that's this stuff always makes me feel a little bit ill, because it's oh gosh, have I screwed them up? Whatever, but I think that even being here for this conversation is going to help you so much. And it shows that you are wanting to create a little bit of change. And even when I did start diving into conscious parenting, and it was like a slap in the face, it felt like a really rude awakening. I just kept thinking okay, but at least I'm taking action. At least I am so aware now of how I'm showing up. And even though nothing really shifted at first, even when I started taking action, and I would almost beat myself up too, because I would be okay, I got this. I'm I'm going to show up better for my kids, and I'm going to listen to them more, and I'm not going to, you know, expect them to behave a certain way for me. I'm going to behave a certain way. And then when I lost control, I would be like, oh, I screwed it up. Like I failed. It's almost like trying to eat healthy, and on day 3
Right.
you find yourself in the pantry eating all the chips, and you're like, I'm a loser, like I screwed up again, I can't do this. But it's like, no, you're learning, because now eating the bag of chips in the pantry isn't normal. Whereas like with our parenting, and if you're catching yourself yelling and being like, oh, that was not how I wanted to do this, that's good, because before you were doing that and not thinking twice about it. And
Right.
it's like you have to like kind of go through this like really uncomfortable phase when you start learning these new things.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle change. And I'm sure, Megan, I'm sure that you teach in your wellness things that, you know, you just can't, you know, stop one behavior and start another one. And then, you know, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in a week and keep it off. It's a lifestyle change. And that's exactly what this is as well. It's a practice, and it's a lifestyle change. And what I always tell people is it's not stopping doing one thing and starting doing all these other things. You have, and to what you said too, Megan, about blaming ourselves, that's exactly where we go. Oh my gosh, then I've done this all wrong. And I did it too. And I had a hard time with that. And I used to tell myself, well, I did it the wrong way, but now I'm starting to do it the right way. I don't say that anymore, because we aren't doing it wrong. I did what I knew. That's not wrong. We all do what we know. That's not doing it wrong. That's not screwing anybody up. It's just life. And when we can decide, well, you know what, this isn't really working for me, I want to learn some different things, then one tool at a time we learn, and we get to use that tool really well, then we get another tool. And so we have all these tools in our parenting toolbox. And what I say is, you don't have to take any of them out, or maybe you do. Maybe you look at them and go, yeah, I don't really want to do that one anymore. But pick up one new one and get really good at that. And what will happen as the more tools you get, what will happen is the old stuff will just fall away. And one day you'll be like, oh, wow, I didn't use that for haven't used that for a long time. Like, it took me really, really long time to be able to self-regulate myself around my children. I mean, you know, a long time. And one day, not too long ago, I was talking to somebody about yelling, and I thought, oh my gosh, I haven't yelled for like years. You know, it was just like, oh, I'd forgotten, you know, so it just falls away naturally after, you know, after a while. But yeah, it's one thing.
What would be like one tool that you know, somebody listening could like pick up and start using, like could implement now, if they're like, well, this sounds all lovely, but I have no idea what to do?
Right. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to say is, the truth about it is, the only person you have control over is you. And contrary to popular belief that we were conditioned to think we control our children, we don't. We cannot make our children do things. What we do is we end up breaking down their will. And some of children will give up their will easily, and some will not. And the problem with that is we don't want to break their will down. They need that strong will for when they are a little bit older, say pre-teenish years, or even younger than that, when we want them to say no to when somebody is invasive to them or doing things that are inappropriate. We want them to have their will and say no. we want them to be able to say no to peer pressure and doing things that are unhealthy. So if we break that down, it works for us maybe when they're young, but it doesn't work for them when they're older. So we don't want to do that. So the first thing is just to know that we don't control another person. The only one we control is us. And that is taking our power back. Because if you think you're making, or if you think somebody else is making you mad, then you've given your power to them. And basically you're saying you need to change in order for me to feel better. And so in that way, we're putting our child in charge of us. You, the 5-year-old, need to take care of me, the adult's feelings, and change what you're doing. Which, when we really talk about it that way, it seems pretty silly. But it's what we do. So that would be the first thing, just to know that you have the power to make the changes, not our children. And so power comes from within, not from overpowering somebody. The second thing I would say is to practice seeing the best in yourself and in your children. So rather than seeing that behavior, and this is a practice, seeing that behavior as disrespectful or going against my authority or doing it on purpose, we're gonna see it as a call for help, that they lack a skill that they need. Whether it's, I'm really having these big emotions that I don't know what to do with. I don't have the words to explain it. Or if it's a skill of they hit somebody, oh, you wanted to turn with that toy. So now I'm going to teach you how to ask for a turn. And here's the other thing. We think we can tell our children that like maybe 4 or 5 times and then they should have it. Research says that a child has to learn to learn a skill, a child has to practice a skill in context 2,000 times to really learn that skill. So if you've told them 5 times, you have a few more to go. So seeing the best, because if you see all of that disrespect and stuff, you're going to react and blow up. If you can see it as, oh, you wanted my attention, or, oh, you wanted a turn, or, oh, you are really mad and didn't know how to, explain that. And then tell them what to do. When you're really mad, here's what you can do. When you're want to turn, here's what you can do. When you want to get to the other side of the room, instead of push your sister, you can go around her, whatever it is. So just seeing that children want to succeed. They do not want to make us mad. So seeing their behavior, seeing the best, and seeing the best in ourselves, because we will lose it. We will. And that's just being human. And so we need to give ourselves grace, give ourselves an oops, and we'll try again. And we can even say to our kids, you know what, that was not the way I wanted to handle that. I'm going to try a different way next time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I would say just focus on what you want. So again, I want my child to listen. I'm going to listen. I want my child to be respectful. I'm going to be respectful. And really thinking about, am I respectful to myself? Because we have to be able to do these skills inwardly with ourselves before we can do them with others. So how respectful are you with your time and your energy? Do you have time and energy for yourself, or do you give it all away? And again, how respectful are you talking to yourself in your head? So I want my child to be more calm. I'm going to be more calm. I'm going to create more inner calm. So when we change ourselves, it has a profound impact on our children. And I think you can attest to that, Megan.
Yeah, huge. And for me, like a really motivating factor in changing how I was parenting was because I really wanted to have connection with my kids. That wasn't even really something that I thought about a lot. Like, I just really saw myself as like, I'm the mom, I'm the parent. I'm just here to like raise them and get them to be their best. And I was lacking, like, of course I loved them, but I was lacking this connection with them. And I talked about this a little bit on the podcast too. And I just think I think when I always say it, it makes people like feel okay about probably having similar thoughts. But I was so afraid that I actually didn't like my children, and it like would eat me away. Like and it feels so, it sounds awful saying it out loud, but I had this fear that I didn't like them because I was so angry with them all the time, and like they pissed me off a lot more than it seemed to be bringing me joy. And what ended up happening, and it was actually on one of the retreats that I was on, was that it just like it finally hit me. And it wasn't that I didn't love my children. It was I didn't like how I felt when I was with them. And it actually had nothing to do with them.
Right. I think that is such a gift that you give people sharing that story, because I think all of us have felt that. And you sharing that is like, oh, wow, it wasn't just me. I think we all feel that. And I think what you're doing with telling that story is so important, because I think there's so much shame and judgment around parenting. And the more we don't talk about those types of feelings, the more we keep it inside, the more that shame grows. And so I think that's such a gift.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it always just brings up so many emotions too, because I hid those feelings. And then when I realized it, it was like, oh my gosh, like I now feel like things can change so much, because I was searching for this like calmness in my life. I wanted things to feel calm. I wanted to feel calm. I wanted my household to be calm. Like I was forever striving for calmness. And I was never getting it. I was never ever getting it. And then when I realized I actually just need to like love my children. And I mean, I know we all love our children, but I actually needed to feel this connection and feel this love with them. And that is how I knew I was going to create the calmness that I was looking for. Like, because it was like, I just wanted things to be calm. Every day I'd write in my journal, I want it to be calm. I want it to be calm. And I was never feeling like that. And then the moment that it like hit me in the face was, it's actually not that I don't like my children. It's, I don't like how I am around them. I don't like how I feel around them. So if I could change that part and start to just see them as they actually are, and just realize like they are perfect the way they are. There's nothing wrong with them. I need to do some work on myself so that I can feel good around them. And then I was able to have like that connection with them, and that was so important to me. And since I feel so connected now to my children, like it's amazing, and it brings me so much joy every single day. And that has brought so much calmness and peace into our house. And I don't know if you were on that. I don't think you were on this retreat. It was my very first retreat ever. So like exactly 2 years ago. And there was this woman there, and I think she had 6 children, and she would go on and on all the time about how she loved her children, and she was missing them so dearly while we were on this retreat. And she would talk about how her favorite thing is to just be with her children and be around them. And she's always like, that's like her favorite thing, is to just have them with her all the time, doing all the things. And I was like, what? Seriously? Like, I love not being with them. Like, I do not, I'm so
That's
fine with them not here. And I never thought I could get to the point where I felt really good being with them. And now I do. Like, this whole quarantine thing has not bothered me. I actually love it. I love that they're here. And I mean, there's moments, of course, but, and I'm like that woman now who can actually declare, I feel really good when they're around me.
yeah, that's amazing. And it is the feeling, it's the feelings that we want to change. It's not really our children, it's how we feel when we're around them. And so that's what we need to work on, is how do we feel calmer, like you said, and more joyful when we're around our children. And that's doing that inside work. Yeah, and thank you for bringing up connection. That's a huge, huge part. So the biggest barriers in our children's behaviors for us to reach them is fear and disconnect. We really need to help to connect with our kids, and that doesn't have to take a lot of time. It just needs us to be present with them for just, even if it's just giving them a compliment, or telling them, oh, you picked up, the dishes and put them in the dishwasher, so, the table could be clean. That was so helpful. High five. That's what they really want. They really need to feel safe and to feel valued. And when I say safe, I'm not really talking about physical safety, but it's the emotional safety. Knowing that, it's the fear of, I'm going to get in trouble, or I'm going to get yelled at, or I'm going to somehow be reprimanded. And we think if they fear it, they'll do something better. And that's not true. If they are in fear, they get thrown. It's about what's happening internally. When our brain detects fear, it goes into fight or flight, because that's our brain's job, is to help us survive. And so if your child's in fear, that is a barrier, because they're in their lowest part of their brain, which has nothing to do with knowledge. So yeah, and then feeling valued. They just need to know that they have value. And that's what connection brings. When we connect with our kids, it's like, oh, you like me, I'm worthy. It brings those good feelings to them.
Yeah. And even just like, I started having fun with my kids, and I don't mean playing, because I don't play with, like, I'm not one of those moms that is playing with their kids, and so I thought that I couldn't have fun with my kids if I wasn't willing to, like, get down and push cars around or play Barbies or whatever. But we have been able to just, like, have fun together because we're connected, and just those conversations that I'm able to have with them, and, like, it makes such a difference. And I mean, I know somebody mentioned something about their husband, and I mean, my husband and I are parenting very differently right now, unfortunately. I mean, I always say that he's doing the best he can with what he has. And that's something that I had to really accept, is like, sure, I've been on this journey for 2 years. I've invested time into learning about this way of parenting. I've invested money into this way of learning about parenting. He has not. He hasn't done anything except see me do that in the house. So I can't, like, because for a while I was so resentful to him, even because I was like, gosh, you're doing it wrong. Like, you can't talk to them like that, and you can't yell at them like that, and you're not going to have any relationship with them when they're older, because they always just hear you yelling at them and telling them this and that. And I have to just really keep telling myself, he's doing the best he can. He's doing the best he
Right.
can with the tools.
Right. And we kind of go to that too, that, oh, well, they're not doing it that way, so this can never work. And again, that's part of our wanting to control. And again, we can't change our spouse any better than we can change our children, but we can change what we're doing. And when we change what we're doing, it has a profound impact on not just our children, but on everybody in our life. And I don't remember if I mentioned this at the beginning, but conscious parenting has changed every relationship in my life. It has changed the relationship with my spouse, with my parents, with my friends, with my coworkers, everyone. And they didn't do a thing. It was me that made changes, and then I showed up to those relationships differently.
Yeah. And I heard something, I think it was this week, maybe on a podcast, or I read it or something, but about how like vibrations always raise up. So if you are coming into a relationship and showing up in your day at like a high vibration and a high, like, just in a good place, and in a place where you are going to control yourself, and you are going to show up for your children differently, and be the leader, I guess. But somebody else is down here, well, they're just naturally over time going to raise up to your vibration. Like your children will, your spouse will, your friends, like they just naturally will. And what I always have to remind myself is like, don't lower, Megan. Like, do not lower. It's so tempting sometimes when, I feel like the kids and I have had like a great day, and, I feel so connected with them and things are great and calm in the house. And then my husband walks in, and for whatever reason, the energy just kind of changes. And my husband's a great person. I'm not like putting him down.
We're sure he is.
But he comes in and the energy shifts. And I used to pull myself down to his level and to his vibration. And I've started to just keep myself up there, and it takes work. And it's like, I will not lower myself. I will let him come up to me, and I'll let him come and meet me up here. And you guys might be like, I have no idea what the hell she's talking about. Like, that's all crazy. But in a lot, I think how I helped use these tools, like the tools of, don't yell so much, and figure out how to respect yourself and love yourself. The way that I was able to get here was by slowing down, and all these things that we talk about in wellness and health, and journaling, like getting out a journal and starting to journal about, how do I want to feel? How do I want to show up as a parent? What are the things that my children do that trigger me? Because those are likely the things that I am doing myself. And spending time in meditation or silence or like breathing. I'll say to the kids all the time, like, I just need some space. I am going in my room for 5 minutes, 20 minutes, however long. I just need to breathe. And that then resets me. And I have to do that like several times a day. I'll come out here. I'll just like breathe. I'll go for walks at night alone. Like, I'm constantly trying to figure out how I can like keep my vibration high, keep myself from feeling depleted, so that I can continue to show up for my children the way that they need me to show up. But you can't do that if you're burning on all cylinders and depleted and having no time for yourself.
Right.
And that's why everything's connected.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up energy, because actually children communicate the most through our energy. It's not as much about what we say. It is our energy that they pick up on. So if we're stressed, they will be stressed. Our state dictates their state. So whatever energy state we're in, they're going to pick that up. And so it's so important that we manage our own stress. Another thing somebody put in there that's bringing up a lot of emotions. Yes, this will bring up a lot of discomfort and a lot of emotion. And I've been doing this for about 15 years, and I'm still on this journey. It is not a start and stop. I mean, you keep peeling back the layers, and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And this past year, I have gone much deeper, and I think I've cried more this past year than I have in my whole life. But on the other side of that, I've learned exponentially about myself. And now I've been able to release some of that. And I am so much more joyful. So don't be afraid to get uncomfortable. Don't be afraid to let in those feelings, because our fear is, if I let in this sadness, it's going to consume me. I'm just going to be sad forever. And you're not. Feelings are like the weather. Some days are sunny, some days are rainy, some days are stormy. And we can't control that, but we can feel it. And then when once we feel it and allow it, it will dissipate. So that is another thing with this journey, is that traditionally we've been really good about avoiding or stuffing down feelings. We have not been a culture of feeling our feelings. And when I started this, I was nowhere near any of this either. I think I read in one of the books, one of my first books, it was, how are you feeling? Name how you're feeling. Okay, I think I named angry. And then it was, where do you feel it in your body? And I just thought that was crazy talk, because I'm like, what do you mean, where do I feel it? And what I learned was, oh my gosh, I can name feelings. I don't know how to feel them. And that was one of the things that really stuck with me, and I wanted to bring into the classroom, because I realized as teachers, we were trained to tell children, feelings are okay. You can be sad and you can be angry. But when I really looked at it, it's like, that's what we're saying, but that's not really what we're doing, because we're telling kids, you're okay, stop crying, you're fine, that's nothing to cry about, let's go do this over here, and we're trying to just give them something else to avoid it. And it's really in childhood where we learn to eat our feelings. You're all fine, let's go to McDonald's. Or if you're good, we'll go to McDonald's, or whatever. So yeah, so there's that. And then the other thing I wanted to say was, you talked about, what do I do to, I knew I wanted to stop yelling. Rather than thinking in your mind, I want to stop yelling, think about, what do you want to do instead? Because what you focus on, you'll get more of. So if you're constantly thinking about not yelling, you're focused on yelling. So think about, what do I want to do instead of yelling? Maybe I want to stop and breathe. So think about that. I'm going to breathe. And then one other thing you brought up, Megan, was making time for yourself. And I know a lot of people with young children are going to say, I don't have time. But if you prioritize it, you can make it work for you. Even if it's even if you start getting up 10 minutes earlier before the kids, to have that time for yourself, you can do this. And it's really, if you are willing to invest time and energy and even money, it is the best investment you will make. And the more you invest in yourself, the bigger payoff you're going to get in the end.
Yeah, I totally agree. Do you guys have any questions at all for Diane? We can just kind of take the last bit of this call, and if this is your opportunity to bring up any, maybe situations that you found yourself in and you're wondering how you could handle it differently, or anything that you just kind of feel like is burning right now in your gut that
they're probably like, wow.
This is your chance for sure. You can unmute yourself, or you can just put it in the chat box.
Is there a chance that there's something like spending too much time with your kid? I think that's kind of the same thing of when we talk about infants and they say, you can't spoil a baby. I don't know that there's really too much time you can spend with your child. I think sometimes we can take over their play and make it more about us. So I think we want to be conscious of that. But I think, spending time with your child is great. I mean, I think there's probably a balance of them being able to, have independent play and then, cooperative play.
So how do you get her to do independent play? So my question is, I can spend probably 8 hours playing Barbies or house or kitchens or whatever, and it gets to a point where she just won't play on her own, and she becomes very needy if I'm not there playing with her. So then I don't get anything that I want to get done. So I know that there's you have to set boundaries, but also when I do set boundaries, like say I'll do my thing for 10 minutes, you do your thing for 10 minutes, and then is it 10 minutes? Can you come play? I don't know. I think it's more mom guilt.
You're onto something there.
And I talked to Megan about it, and I think at the end of the day, after she threw out some questions, I'm like, this has got to be more mom guilt than anything else. But other people,
yeah. So she's. I think that it's important for children to know that they can play independently. So when you're with her, are you fully present in that play?
Oh yeah. And we get into arguments about how I play Barbies and how she plays Barbies, and then it can end up into an argument, and then I'm like, well, if you want me to play, I play it my way and you play your way, and it never really matches, sort of idea.
Okay, so she is looking for control. She's looking for control. And so when you set boundaries, tell me a little bit about that. Not just around play, but whatever other boundaries, bedtime, whatever.
Usually, bedtime is very straight. It's 8:00 and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. We bath and do our thing at 7 so that by the time 8:00 comes, we read the story and then we're off to bed. So everything else seems to be fine. And breakfast time is, breakfast time. You get your own breakfast. And these are the things that you can choose from. Same thing for lunch is pretty much I will make you what I'm making, and then that's it, kind of thing.
Okay, so she's kind of gotten used to you playing a lot with her, or? Okay, so here's maybe one suggestion I would say is, how old is she?
She'll be 7 at the end of July.
Okay, so children process language through images. And so one of the things you could do is make a schedule with pictures and show that, however your day goes, and have a part where this is playtime with mom.
Okay.
And then this is your independent playtime or free play, whatever you want to call it. This is time for mom to do things like laundry or whatever it is that you need to do. If she wants to help you with that laundry, that's fine, but you take directive around that. So you build the boundaries and then guide her to be within those boundaries. So it's free play time, and I want you to play with me. You refer back to the schedule and you say, so you can play with Barbies or you can do puzzles. Which will going to work for you? 2 positive choices.
Yeah.
If she melts down, you help her through that. But when she comes back to calm, it's still free play. And here are your choices. What's going to work for you? So anytime she has a meltdown because you're not playing with her, you're not going to give into that, because then that's a tool that she figures that's how the world works. So that's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you.
Kim was just asking, when you say spend money to learn conscious parenting, what tools are you spending money on, and where is a good place to start? So, I mean, I think there's different ways to look at this. I had started listening to the Mamas in Control podcast. I just like stumbled upon that podcast, and that's sort of where it started. That's where I even like heard about this kind of stuff, and I kind of got an awakening from that. And she had referred to Dr. Shefali quite a bit and her books. So I have read both of her books several different times. And then I ended up joining Heather's mastery program. Really, I reached out to Heather because I knew that I needed some help with my parenting, and I didn't know what I was getting involved in, but that's where I started, and that's where Diane and I met on a retreat with Heather. So that, of course, that was a very big investment into learning about parenting and other things. Like she tied business into it and like whatever I needed. But that was like a 8-month coaching program with her. But I know Diane also, she offers some coaching or courses.
Right. So where I started I have invested a lot in this, and not right away, but where I started was small investments into the books. Like you said, I read a lot of Dr. Becky Bailey's books. And actually I read all of them, and I've read Dr. Shefali's books. And so I did that first. And then when I felt like I wanted more, then I started going to some conferences around conscious parenting and conscious discipline, relationship-based practices. I mean, it's called a lot of different things. So I went to some conferences to learn more from Dr. Bailey, actually. And then I eventually I invested with Heather as well. So what I would tell you right now is, learn as much about it as you can. Learn, get some books, listen to some podcasts, YouTube, go on YouTube and listen to Dr. Shefali and also Dr. Becky Bailey. They've got lots of YouTube videos on there that you can get information on. I have a program that I teach this on, and my website is dianesorensen.net, Beauty and Behavior. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, from spending $10 to spending thousands of dollars. So, and the thing too that was difficult for me at first was we live in such a culture that this is like a foreign language. And so when I started it, I was a little shy about it because I was never one to, be bold and let's do something new. I just wanted to fit in what everybody else was doing. And so people would question it. And I was just like, I didn't talk about it a lot. I just did it in my own little classroom where, nobody else was really watching me. And it was hard because I would question myself. I knew in my very soul that this was the right thing, but because we're so saturated with all the judgment and all the comparing and, being competitive, I would still question, I don't know, is this the right way? And then I'd go back to the videos or the books and go, oh yeah, it is. And so when it happened that other people started noticing and going, what are you doing? And can you teach other people? I was like, ooh, I don't know. It really scared me. And so I had to dig a little deeper into myself to be able to go, okay, I'm worthy. I know this stuff. I have something to offer.
I don't know if you can see, Caitlin had a question there. Are you able to see the chat?
Okay, so this question is about, it's almost the opposite of the other question. Is there, talking about I'm not spending enough time with my child. It can be a hard thing to learn how to connect. And that again has a lot to do with how we were raised and how we put on a lot of armor to protect ourselves. And so a lot of us tend to disengage because it feels safe. And so that was the case for me. I had to learn how to be okay with connecting on an authentic level with even my children. And so just don't think like you're a bad mom. I mean, again, we're not doing any of this parenting stuff wrong. We're doing what we know, and we're doing it the best way we can. And so maybe just being conscious of, I'm going to commit to spending 10 minutes 3 times a day present with my child. If that's a place that you could start. And yeah.
Yeah, and even what I would add to that too is like, maybe just ask yourself what like, why don't you want to spend time with him? Like, what is coming up for you? Like, what makes that feel uncomfortable for you maybe? And even the same with Bonnie, like, why is it uncomfortable for you not to play with her? So like, I think it goes both ways, like really just like sitting with that and asking yourself, okay, like, why do I feel okay not being with them? Is it that you just don't even know how to connect with your child? Is it that maybe you were like me and you didn't like how you felt when you were with them? Or
That's a great journal prompt.
yeah, I think it is too. I think that's something to really sit with for both sides, like for Bonnie as well. Like, maybe what am I trying to avoid in my life by spending 8 hours playing Barbies? You know, so I think that is just really, it all comes back to just like really sitting with yourself and like listening to like, okay, why, like ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why is this bothering me? Obviously it's bothering both of you. One's not spending enough time or feels that way, and one feels like they're spending too much time. So if that's something's coming up for you, so you've got to really like lean into that, and it's probably going to be painful. Like, it's probably going to stir up a lot of emotions that are uncomfortable, so it's easier just to kind of keep on dusting it under the rug, and I'm not going to look at that.
Right. We can sabotage ourselves because of those feelings. So sometimes we go, okay, I want to do this, but then we have feelings about it. We think, well, this feels so bad. Why am I doing this? So sometimes those feelings come up and that can sabotage us. But yeah, like Megan said, lean into those feelings, allow that discomfort. Because like for me, I learned every time I had discomfort, go the other way. I mean, why would I be doing this if it's uncomfortable? But what I've learned since is being able to sit in that discomfort, and on the other side of that is sweet freedom.
Yeah, agree. This was so good, and I'm sorry for everyone that is like, well, my time, it's already after 9 o'clock. I know Diane is a little earlier in the evening, but any last minute burning questions that you want to run by Diane at all? Definitely like look up her website. On Facebook, she has a private
I
group.
always forget about that.
Yeah. She has a private group, and she is always doing live videos all the time about this stuff. So like, that's even such a great place to start, is just by like, I think once you open the doors to this, it's like anything. Like when you first opened the doors to like being a little bit healthier, it was like, oh, oh, what's next? What's next? What's next? And it's the same with conscious parenting. It's like, okay, so you took a step by coming tonight onto this call, and then maybe you'll go join Diane's Facebook group and start listening to her live videos. And maybe you're going to download, Mamas in Control podcast. And maybe you're going to grab a book on Amazon and start reading that. Like, it's just like one thing after the other that will just start opening more doors. And I think one thing I will say last, and I'll let Diane have any parting words, but because this is what I was so looking for an immediate fix. And like, I made the decision to start changing, and I wanted to see the rewards and feel a difference immediately. Like, I just wanted my household to be calm immediately. And I wanted me to have control over yelling and have that connection immediately. And it's taken me 2 years, and I'm still not where I want to be. So much like our weight loss journey and beating that sugar craving and getting, in a workout routine, none of these things happen overnight. And this is no different. So you just have to keep showing up and keep doing the work.
So there's a question, what was the group called? It's called Beauty and Behavior on Facebook. So, and then I also have the website. And somebody else said, thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one feeling like this as a parent. And I assure you, there's millions of us thinking the same thing. We just got to start talking about it. And I guess, I'll end with, like you said, Megan, we are a society of do it quicker, faster, easier. And so it's hard to shift because this is not fast and it's not easy. However, we can decide to have short-term relief with the quick fixes or long-term success. And this isn't about doing something so that you don't have conflict or that, so you can get your child to comply. It's really about learning how to deal with conflict and helping our children know that, so that when they're adults, they will know how to manage conflict in an appropriate way. It's about resiliency. It really builds the window of tolerance so that we and our children can have more tolerance to when things don't go our way. So yeah, I guess I'll end with that.
Thank you so much for taking this time to jump on with us tonight. I know that everyone really appreciates it, and I'm going to post the recording like in our wellness group, and I'll even put Diane's links in it as well, just so you guys can just easily click on things. So if you didn't get it written down, that's okay. But thank you so much, Diane. It's always like I just love being in your presence, even if it's virtually.
Well, thank you for having me. And I want to thank all the people on here tonight for taking the time to come on and taking that first step to, making a difference in your life and your children's and in the world, because they're going to be out in the world. So everything we do affects everybody, and we can change the world, one parent, one teacher, one child at a time. So thank you so much for your presence tonight. And thank you, Megan.
You're welcome. Okay, you guys have a great night, and we'll talk soon. Bye, guys. Bye.